If I was building a team of the Avengers, I wouldn't want a bunch of people with the exact same superpower. You, as a team leader or CEO, founder, should be hiring people that are specialists in your organization early on. You need to be able to convince other human beings to join you on your journey. And if you take a second to think about that, you're literally talking about talented human beings from all across the planet who could be doing literally anything else in the world. And they are trading their best years of their life, and you want them to come work with you on your thing? Well, that's really, really difficult to do. And so when you talk about the team members you're able to bring on, that's why it's so important, because every time you bring a new team member onto your team, you're able to say, that person believes in my vision. That person is willing to trade in more money elsewhere, more prestige elsewhere to kind of help me build this thing. And so that's why I think that it's important to focus on team building early on. As a Black founder, and we know the statistics on that, I didn't go to Harvard or Stanford or any of these startup schools. Didn't work at Facebook or Google or Amazon, so I didn't have the FANG pedigree. And that didn't really come from money. So I grew up on food stamps and WIC and all these different things. So all 5 of those things were working against me. And so I had to figure out, how do I bring people along for my vision? So when you talk about the team, that is technically your first customer. Before you can make a product, before likely you get the investor, you have to sell someone to come and join your team. So that's incredibly valued. Next, we think about the value of each team member. You as a team leader or CEO, founder, should be hiring people that are specialists in your organization early on. You don't need a bunch of generalists. And I think about this in the same way I think about the Avengers. If I was building a team of the Avengers, I wouldn't want a bunch of people with the exact same superpower. I would want people that are specialists that I can trust to do this thing. It's important for me to make sure this person's really, really good at this. And so I'm able to not only trust that they're good at it, but I'm also able to defer to them. You don't have to answer to me on your skill set. And so it's important to make sure that they have these specializations so that you're able to take it to the next level by working with them. Lastly, when it comes to the team, you only have a little bit of resources in the beginning before you raise your seed round or your master series. And so we've got to think through, how do we build a team with finite resources? And that's why every dollar matters. You want to find specialists that can contribute, knowing that you sold them first. There's a huge gap between the cost of how do I get them to join me before I have the money to pay them? And then, of course, you're competing with cash. Over the last year, we lost candidates. One went to Salesforce and another went to Google. And so we had that person willing to work with us, signed an offer letter, and then Google or Salesforce swoops in. And it's just how do you compete with that much cash? How do you compete with the other bonus and variable compensation? So we think about it this way. So storytelling isn't a soft skill. And I do wish that they would emphasize that more, especially in college, but more so everywhere else, is that being able to convince someone of something is incredibly impactful. I want to be able to tell people things and convince them to do them. I want to get people moving based on my words. And so now we look back and you think about Winston Churchill or Barack Obama or whoever your great orators are in world history, people who are very compelling communicators. Those folks are able to get people to do things without paying them for money. And so when you think about storytelling, it's not a soft skill. It's the ability to effectively communicate with a person, so much so that they not only see your vision, but they see themselves in it and see themselves as part of it. So I encourage you to really think through how your story can be received by folks who would be valuable additions to your team, especially early on. Next, we talk about being creative with the offer letter. Normally, when you think through what goes into an offer letter, we think of a couple of things. We think of salary, right? We may think signing bonus, maybe relocation bonus. We think benefits, healthcare, childcare. And so the key here is that because you're building a startup that likely no one else is building, you get to make all the rules. Be creative. You don't have to do a standard offer letter. You can do whatever makes sense for you. One of the things we did in the very, very beginning was we had a team member that I needed. He's a technical person. He was building one of the first products. And I said, hey, look, I can't afford to pay you what you would make. But here's what I can do. I have no money. So I set up a deferred compensation plan. Basically, I said, you work today, I will pay you tomorrow. And this is how we structured it. I said, how long would it take you to build this? And he said, oh, probably around this many hours. I said, well, what's your hourly rate? He said, about this much. I said, okay, so that means it would cost you X if I just paid you cash money to build this. Absolutely. I said, all right, I understand. What if I give you 60% of X in cash in the future? If you help me build a product that I can go raise $250,000 for, I'm going to give you $10,000 cash. If you build a product that's even crazier, the valuation's wilder, and I can raise $500,000, I'll give you $20,000. But on the other 40%, I know that you've got some value, but I can't afford to pay you all of the money in cash. I'm going to give you equity. And I did it as an equity grant. I didn't want to do it as options. It is an equity grant where I said, you're going to get half of the equity grant once you build the beta, and you're going to get half of the equity grant once the production releases out, and you're going to support it for a year. So in that offer letter, not only did I say you're getting equity as a grant and not options, but also I broke down when they're going to get paid, and there was a graduating scale. So as if they helped me do my job really well, aligning of vision and idea, then I would also be able to pay them more. That was an incredibly creative offer letter in 2016, as far as I was concerned, and it helped me get our first product out. And we raised we were raising a $300,000 round, but as I mentioned earlier, I raised $310,000, so that check number 001 from my bank account went to him. Next, try and buy is definitely your friend. For most of us, we may not be able to take a person from Nike or from Google to have them leave their full-time job, but a lot of those people may have time that you can actually use. So what we did for our COO most recently, she was working at a company and she said, hey, I could actually work for you for 20 hours a week. And I said, oh, that's fantastic. Like, I probably can't afford more than 20 hours a week. I will pay you as a contractor for 3 months. And if we both like working with each other, we'll extend it for another 3 months. And after that, I believe that we should be in a position to make you a full-time offer. So what we did in that case was a try and buy, basically allowing the contractor or the person I think would be a great team member to join our team as a contractor, didn't have to go through payroll, taxes, and all this complicated stuff, set them up as 1099. We use a platform called Gig Wage to pay our contractors, which is a great platform. And so from there, we were able to set clear deliverables. We set a time, we understood compensation, and there was a goal that both parties wanted on the other end. We wanted to be able to hire her full time, but we couldn't afford it on day zero. So we structured a way in which for us to try and work together, see how we like each other's working habits, see how we liked each other's performance. And then from there, we're actually able to do it. We said, so-and-so is joining our team. We're super excited. She's lending her expertise. We got all these likes on Twitter. Investors are like, oh, they're working with this. This is interesting. And then we were able to get the cash to bring her on full time. So my key takeaways in this, when it comes to team building with limited resources, is create a process and stick with it. Whatever your plan is on how you're going to hire, make sure it's an equitable process from beginning to end, so that you're able to evaluate each candidate objectively and be able to arrive at who the best candidate is for the role. Next, once you do get to that candidate that is the perfect person for the role, be creative, understand, and you can also communicate it with them. Let them know that your resources are finite and that you may have to be a little bit more creative to get them to join your team in a full-time capacity. And that also means sometimes you're having them join in a part-time capacity, as I talked about on the try and buy side. Last, always be courting. You never know where you're going to be able to find good talent. As I mentioned, being able to run into Chloe and hire her within a week, or whether it was working with Bari and saying like, man, I would love for her to work with me someday, but our company's just not at the right size. And then finally getting her to join 3.5 years later. That, to me, both of those examples emphasize the constant courting and always be courting aspect of this.
A question about transparency on compensation. You post the compensation on the hiring deck, on the job rec.
We put how much the role will pay in the hiring deck. That helps us filter down who's going to apply. And as we talk through it, say, hey, look, I make this much, the CTO makes this much, the COO makes this much, and this is what you all make at this role. That's the economics of it. I'm willing to pay you between X and Y% equity, between A and B dollars in salary. If you want B dollars in salary, you're getting X% in equity. But if you want all the equity, you want a bunch of equity, Y% of equity, I've got to come down on the cash. Like this trade-off, I have a finite amount of resources. Our CTO is in a position because he was an early Bitcoin person and got out at a really great point. He was like, I don't actually need a bunch of cash, but I'm super bullish about this. I want all the equity I can get. So we were able to give him more equity and pay him less cash. Whereas some of our early software engineers were just like, look, cash is really, really important to me. It's not that I don't believe in it, but I have to pay my rent. I have to, eat. Great. We're going to pay you in cash up here. And then this is how much equity you have as part of the upside of participating. And so that type of transparency is important, not only because you need to make sure you're motivating people with how they want to be motivated, but also in making sure they understand that everything is being traded uniquely, but everyone has the opportunity to get a fair offer.